Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus, shall we? Hello everyone, my name is Jane, and my profession is a nurse. I decided to open up and share my experience of a man I once knew. He was a medical surgeon whom I discovered was not of this world. If he was, then, this man is a life form I have never encountered before on Earth. I work as a nurse in a hospital. I have 3 children, and happily married in a nice house. I do all the things a Canadian family does, being very down to earth. We watch the hockey games, embrace snow sports in the winter, and go hiking in the summer during vacation. My children go to school, and we argue at times, as families do. I love my husband, and the whole world and life just seems perfect. I consider myself down to earth, not into any kind of conspiracy or UFO stuff at all. We are also strong Christians, and I work hard at my career as a nurse, which I love, and I attend and get involved in church charitable events when I can. So, with this kind of background and being well settled, I would consider myself the last person to be a fanatic or to think I have an overactive imagination. I'd been working in a hospital as a nurse for 5 years when I eventually came across someone who was a surgeon, a heart specialist. David was 45 years old, tall, and very fit. He also seemed very young for his age. Also, he had an unusually flat back and didn't seem to have any family and would live alone. He was very handsome, I would say, had a very dark and mysterious nature to him. That I would later make shocking discoveries. This was even before I realized he was a reptilian. We got to know each other during my shifts, and we became good friends and quite close. As our relationship deepened, it was as if he saw me almost as a close confidant, where he would share his secrets. He would, out of the blue during coffee, start talking really deep subjects such as other worlds in this galaxy. In addition, specific details and events on neighboring star systems close to the Earth. At the time, I just shrugged my shoulders and laughed it off as if he had been watching too many movies. It was bizarre not only what he told me, but also how he was very serious, as if he had been there. Like most people, David could see that I could not take in some of the things he mentioned, and he would change the subject. To give you an example, he mentioned how there was an ancient war on this planet a long time ago in the distant past between humans, Atlanteans, and a reptilian race. That the reptilians brought with them the dinosaurs, whom were pets and food. At the time, there were 2 major superpowers, being the reptilian group, who were what became known in the New Age concepts as the Lumerians. Lumeria was a vast continent that covered much of what is now the Pacific Ocean, and the Atlanteans, who came here when the reptilians were already settled on Earth for over 300,000 years or more. This reptilian group originally came from the Draco constellation and settled on Earth as a part of the expansion of the Draco race, conquering and occupying worlds. What was known as Atlantis was a large landmass that covered much of the Atlantic Ocean. These Atlanteans wanted to get rid of the dinosaurs, which was the real cause of their extinction. They also wanted and nearly succeeded in wiping out the reptilian Lemurian race, but they escaped into the inner Earth after Lemurian Empire was destroyed via nuclear weaponry and manipulating and fracturing the tectonic plates of the Earth's crust. The Atlantean culture collapsed about 200,000 years later after Lemuria via a series of catatonic events. Eventually, we went back to the Dark Ages, and this is where our recorded history starts. The Earth was originally a water world, and it was impossible for life to naturally have evolved here. This planet ceased to be a water world after the reptilians, on encountering the Earth, terraformed it to make it habitable for humanoid-type life forms. This was just a small fraction of the strange but fascinating things that he told me, but he would communicate it in a way that was subtle and not all in your face at once. So, if we or the others at work were communicating about life on this planet, then he would mention in passing how it was scientifically impossible for humans and all life to emerge here. However, his stories about what was going on in our past and in this galaxy was not the most crazy. David had some rather strange habits and dark addictions. Once, when cleaning after an operation, I noticed he would lick the patient's blood on his fingers or on the gloves worn during the operation. To him, it was like as if he was licking chocolate or something sugary, like a child cleans their fingers after eating candy. I noticed him doing this on numerous occasions, and the most extreme was when he drank the blood of a patient that had been collected into a bowl for surgery. Asking what he was doing, he suddenly turned around, not realizing I was there. He got really hostile and aggressive, as if I had interrupted his ritual or territory. I told him I would report him, and he would be struck off. David would tell me that he had certain addictions, and perhaps we can chat about it later. I never reported him, as I didn't want to destroy his career, and he was not doing any harm, or so I thought. I just didn't think about it and wanted to let it go. He seemed like a mysterious and scary person, and I felt like an attraction, and I was curious about him. He just didn't seem like anyone I had ever met. I even had a slight pity for him, and even protective of David. However, this was not the worst. Once I found him taking body parts of a patient home with him. He said it was for a scientific research and was working with funding from a government on new breakthroughs to regrow lost limbs and organs and unlocking secrets to DNA. That it had been approved to take away patient body parts from the hospital. But I could tell this was not true, and this was confirmed later, when at his home I noticed in the garbage outside of his house there was decaying, half-eaten body parts. He said it was simply old medical research on animals. I knew this was not true, and what he was doing secretly was eating raw body parts and drinking the blood. However, I knew that all sounded insane, and I should have reacted and notified the authorities. I just didn't think of it at the time and didn't want to do anything. There were two experiences, with the first being in the hospital where we worked on my shift. I knew that David was not just a human. And later on, when researching this myself, I realized he was shape-shifting. This is where he would partially switch into a reptilian and then back to human form again. It looked as if everything was just on the threshold on doing a full shift to a reptile. The first incident happened when a patient was in surgery in the operating theater, and I was assisting him, I noticed his eyes completely changed. They seemed to be glowing yellow color, and the pupil of his eyes seemed to turn into a slit, like that of a reptile. I asked him if he was all right, and then his eyes went back to normal again. The second experience happened again when I was at his house. I would attend his house. Since I mentioned above, we got very close, even when all this weird reptilian stuff started happening. However, this was not the worst, as the most traumatic encounter was when he completely changed into a reptile. I will discuss that in a moment. David was very ritualistic, where he would always put the car in the same parking spot at the same time when coming to work. At his home, I noticed he would have a very large collection of clothes, even with several wardrobes. This was because he would only have a bath on a particular day of the week at a certain time. He would only wash his clothes on certain days of the week and would spend all day doing that. I have come across about reptilian brain that exists in humans. It is known as the R complex, located at the back of the head, and is considered the oldest part of the brain in human evolutionary terms. This is where we very much get our flight or fight response. Our mammal brain is where we get our human qualities, things like compassion and willingness to not react, but just figure things out first to avoid confrontation. The R complex, or reptilian brain, is very much shoot first and ask questions later. He would only eat at certain times of the day, as well as only certain kinds of foods. David was big on eating red meat and making sure any steak was quite rare, so that plenty of blood would be present in the steak. Perhaps it really all came to a head when a group of us at work, along with David, was assigned to a hospital for a few weeks in Algonquin Park, Ontario. It is a beautiful wilderness, but there is a darker side to it as well. While working at the hospital in Algonquin Park, and by the way, I will not disclose the name of the hospital, David asked me if I took him to a house away from the town. We were driving, and he would direct where he said the house would exist, as he had friends there. It was a long drive into the wilderness, and then off onto a track that was suitable for cars. Eventually, he told me to pull over next to a big lake of the Algonquin Park. I said to him, "David, there is no house here." At this point, he suddenly changed completely into a reptilian. I screamed as loud as my lungs would allow me, but it did not matter. Let's face it, when you are in such a remote area, there is not a single soul who will hear your screams as your vocal cords echo across the misty lake. The atmosphere of the lake was like a prehistoric feel. It was very spooky. There seemed to be a very ancient vibe to the area. The mist was dense in places as it rose up into the sky, and then sinking back down again onto the surface of the lake. The water's surface was calm, and the blackness of the water underneath appeared as if you were looking into infinity. When David suddenly changed into an iguana reptile, I just freaked out and got out of the car. At this point, he, or his reptilian part, got out as well and just looked at me with his eyes that were of something I will never forget. This time, they did not look like the eyes of a reptile with the slit in the pupil, but were a light blue in nature and almost shone like a blue star. At the center, there was a white for a pupil. His head and face were what I could describe of a reptile with a nose and a mouth. He had pointed ears and long limbs, and became a lot taller, looking very fit and strong. His whole body was naked, and the skin looked like if you were looking to an infinity depth of a void of eternity. The color was greenish and mostly black. The skin was slightly scaly. His hands were almost like a hand, but had 4 long claws with one shorter one. The feet were of 6 claws and webbed feet. I would say upon shape-shifting, he had grown about 4 feet taller, and David, in his human form, was already 6 feet tall. This creature was now at least 10 feet tall. He was huge. He started to speak in a language that I didn't understand, and in fact it seemed like just gibberish. However, what looked like symbols or archetype shapes of different colors started flooding into my mind's eye. They looked like a form of both Hebrew-type symbols and Egyptian. Clearly he was speaking to me, and then the creature turned around to face the lake and walked into it. He started to swim, heading further into the lake. At this point, there were other creatures similar to him that came out to greet the reptilian, who was David. It was at this point that I could see that the lake of Algonquin Park was home to a reptilian nest. There certainly seemed to be a whole nest of them in the lake. There was as many as 20 of these creatures that came to the surface of the lake. I just looked on in sort of an autopilot mode and not sure how to react, so I didn't. Eventually, some of the reptilian humanoid creatures started to move closer to the shoreline. At this point, I decided to get in the car. My heart was in my throat, beating wildly. I turned on the ignition and put it into reverse as the car lunged and skidded backward away from the lake to the trees. Then I sped forward as the wheels spun, throwing up mud and stones racing toward the track. The car almost flew down the road track and bounced around, almost skidding off the road. I never looked back and kept driving. Eventually, I realized that I was coming up to the road where the track ends and was going to overshoot the road and head into the forest on the other side. I slammed on the brakes as I was coming too fast and pulled hard on the steering wheel as I hit the road. This caused the car to swerve from its rear end as I hit the road, skidding like crazy with all the momentum and weight of the car on one side. I thought the car was going to turn over on its side, but it didn't. I then suddenly came to a stop, stalling the car. I realized at this point I was all right and needed to calm down. I was safe, but I needed to get back to my place of residence, where I was staying in Algonquin Park. I drove there at normal speed and went straight to bed when I arrived. Not that I could sleep for obvious reasons. The previous day was on a Sunday when I took David to the lake and had the encounter of David changing into his reptilian form, and we were off of work. I didn't go to work for a day on Monday, so I phoned in sick, but decided I needed to get back home to my family. The following day I went to the hospital when it was my shift. Other members of the staff were asking if I knew where David was, and I said I had no idea. Eventually, the official explanation from those at the top that he had left his job and planning on a new life, and there was no explanation about it. I went back home to my own place and decided to quit my job at that hospital and move to a different nursing position. I have kept this secret, and I have never told anyone about this experience. I have never heard or saw David or his reptilian form ever again. Today's second part of the upload is a canine cryptid. There's sometimes a fine line between myth and real creatures. Many of the animals we know of today were originally considered pure legend of the native accounts, yet managed to turn out to be very real indeed. In other cases, known animals have been so tied up with the paranormal that if one were not to know they actually exist, one might think they were just pure fantasy, judging by the stories associated with them. Is it possible that sometimes these legends and myths converge with reality? One possible case of this is that of a monstrous wolf in Inuit lore, which may or may not have stalked the frozen wilderness of the cold north. One very fearsome creature of the folklore of the Inuit people of the Arctic is that of the demon wolf, the Amarok, also called the Great Wolf. This formidable creature has long been said by the native people to roam the barren Arctic wilderness. Much larger and more muscular than any ordinary wolf, and often said to be pure white in color, or conversely pitch black, hunting down those who are foolish enough to travel alone by night. The beast is also said to prowl the wilderness, picking off weak caribou and other animals, or sometimes roving around plucking up the souls from those who have displeased it. The Amarok always hunts alone, and there are various myths and legends about its exploits among the native populations of Greenland, Alaska, and other areas of the far north. While this may all seem like pure mythology, there are occasional reports of the creature who fit the same general description of the Amarok. One such report comes from a witness who says he and his friends came face to face with something that might be the legendary creature. He says that he and his friend Eric had been out exploring when they came across some sort of monstrous wolf-like beast. He says, as we packed all our stuff, both Eric and I noticed something slowly coming out of the bush, about 150 yards north of us. Acting quickly, we dove silently into the fort. We sat there for at least 5 minutes. It was the size of a large wolf, but dark black with long, large white claws. It did not look like anything Eric or I had ever seen before. Nothing we could compare it to. As it vanished from our sight, we cautiously started back. We made it out of the forest where we came to an abandoned house. We did not plan on stopping, but noticed that about 100 yards on the path the creature was standing on all fours looking at us. We stood paralyzed as it slowly walked toward us. All of a sudden it stopped. We got a good look at it. It had dark yellow eyes, and not one look of mercy on its face, and a row of bright white teeth showing. All of a sudden we heard a noise behind us. We quickly turned around to see a doe and a fawn running out of the thorn bush. We turned around and the creature was gone. Seeing the chance, we ran home. We made it home, but not one memory of that animal will ever leave my mind. We have not seen it since. In 2011, there was also a strange account from a group of 3 hunters who set up camp at Denali National Park and Preserve in Alaska, and were having a good time around the fire when one of their party went off into the trees to relieve themselves. Not long after this, the 2 who had remained at the fire reported that they had heard screams and the sounds of gunfire and what sounded like a prolonged howl. When the friends went out to see what was going on, they claimed that there had been no sign of the missing man, but they do say that they saw a very large creature that looked like a vast bear with canine features circling about in the trees. As for the victim himself, his remains have supposedly never been found. Could this have been the legendary Amarok, or was it something else? In another case from the same area, a woman out taking her dog for a walk came across the badly mutilated remains of an animal, after which she heard a howl and saw what she says was a massive creature about 900 pounds crashing through the brush, which she at first took as a bear, but turned out to have distinct wolf-like features. Such reports have filtered out from the far north from some time to time, and one wonders if they lend any credence to the Amarok, or at least something like it, being real. There has long been speculation among the cryptozoological community that the legend of the Amarok could have their basis in fact. One candidate is a cryptid commonly referred to as the Wahila, which is an enormous, heavily built, wolf-like creature said to prowl the wilds of Alaska and the Northwest Territories. These creatures are also said to have a prominent place in Native American legend, and they are known for their propensity for removing the heads of their victim. This all may be explained, perhaps, by a surviving population of dire wolf, Canis dirus, an extinct species of gigantic wolf that lived during the late Pleistocene and early Holocene epochs 125,000 to 9,440 years ago. It could also possibly be an ancient extinct dog-like predator called the Amphissionid, also called the bear dog, which inhabited the earth from the Middle Eocene subepoch to the Pliocene epoch 42 to 2.6 million years ago, or an extinct form of the hyena called the Hyaenodon. Is there some sort of mysterious wolf-like creature roaming the frigid Badlands? I think so. I also think an interesting little thing that was talked about the other day was how some Native Americans view the wolf as being possibly before us, you know, like a transformation. It'd explain a lot, you know, it really, really would. And I use Kuhnbo's 4 types. His word to me is bond. That man is a genius in my eyes. But you've got 2 types of Sasquatch. The one's on the East Coast, in America, I'm saying. One on the East Coast, which is cavemanish, Neanderthal-like, more apt to use sticks, possibly. And then you have the very large northwestern Alaskan Sasquatch. Then there is his third, which is a Sasquatch with a short muzzle, but it's huge and very secretive, but can be very aggressive. And then we have the Dogman, no matter what shape, but that's his 4. And you know, evolution, we have no proof of anything. I mean, really, do we? No, we don't. We have belief, and belief is great. I mean, God, belief is what keeps a lot of people going in this day and age, you know. Belief in God, belief in whatever. And you know, so I mean, theory in all actuality is a belief in something. So but who knows, maybe. But when it comes to the Wahila, or what these guys are talking about, bear dog, I really think these are straight up dog man, just not choosing to stand on all 4s. My philosophy, or not my philosophy, excuse me, my theory, completely, no one else's, as whack as it is, I've got a whole bunch of them. And someday I'm going to sit down and just record them all for you so you guys can laugh and giggle and throw stuff at your speakers. Alright, moving on to my encounter. Alright, so my encounter happened in 94, 93, 94, the summer of, somewhere around there. There was 5 of us. There was my friend Martin, my friend Gabe, who was driving, and 2 girls, L and R. And R was my girlfriend, L was Martin's girlfriend. Gabe was driving this big old blue Caprice Classic. And we were just hanging out. We weren't drinking, we weren't smoking weed. Maybe we did that night, I'm not really sure, but we weren't at this time. I think we did after. So we were just bored and wanted to just, you know, hang out. We just went for a drive, and we went down to Route 9. We traveled south on 9, going from South Glens Falls, New York, to Saratoga, New York. There's a small town called Wilton on Route 9. And during this time, Wilton was getting built up. Now, it was a lot of forested areas, a lot of farmland. It still is, but I mean, so there was these cul-de-sacs. If you're traveling south, they would be on your right-hand side. Just huge cul-de-sacs. And they were building these beautiful homes on them. And I believe there was 6 or 7 houses on this cul-de-sac. No more than 7. And all on one side. So as you went, you're going right, or you're going down north, or south on 9, south on 9, and on your right-hand side would be the cul-de-sac. So you pull in, and you kind of loop it around, kind of like a horseshoe, and then you go back out on the 9. Well, what we did was we passed the first entrance and went in the second and looped it around and kind of parked 3/4 of the way around the circle. So we were only 1/4 of the way to the end, honey. And we were on the inside island part. So these skeletonized houses that were being built were across the street from us, which behind those houses was thick woods. I mean, we're talking thick. Miles and miles of woods. And it went to, of course, to the Hudson River, the mountains of the Adirondacks. So we're just hanging out. We're listening to some Biohazard. I'll never forget Caprice Classic, listening to Biohazard. Me and Martin are just jamming out because Biohazard and Corrosion of Conformity were our 2 favorite bands at the time, and we were just like, I don't even know, just looking like retards probably. That was not, please don't politically correct me. I know that was a bad, looking like idiots. I apologize if anybody has any family members that have any sort of disability like that. Please don't hate me for saying that. So just looking like idiots. And all of a sudden, we over the music, we hear these like screech barks. They were like a loud, deep, like bark and screech all at the same time. It's unexplainable, and you cannot make the noise. So we're all like, whoa. Now we heard this over the music, and of course Gabe is in the car, and his nickname was Egon because he looked like Egon from the Ghostbusters. And my best friend Martin was from Czechoslovakia, by the way, and he sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he did the give me your glasses, your jacket, and your bike. He literally, that's how he talked from like the day I met him till now, still to this day. So we hear this noise, and we're all like, wow, what is that noise? And the girls are in a little bit of a panic at this point, because they're like, what? Now mind you, one of the girls, Elle, lives in the cul-de-sac down the road from this one. This one was just getting built. Her cul-de-sac had been built like a year prior. And her dad was like some hunter, taxidermist, so she knew animals. Like, she was not afraid of the woods. This girl grew up. I mean, where I live, you grow up, you're not afraid of animals, and you know how to identify animals. So the girls are kind of like freaked out. They're kind of standing. I'm at the front. I was playing with the hood mount thing of the Caprice Classic, flicking it back and forth, listening to music. Martin was standing by like the passenger side front light. The girls were behind that by the mirror, I'd say, on the passenger side. And now mind you, no one knows what no one's talking about Dogman in the 90s. We, growing up, loved the movie The Lost Boys, and we were like just hooked on vampires. We, thought they existed, and, just, I mean, who knows if they really exist or not. I don't know. Maybe they do. So the girls are going, vampire, oh my god, vampire. Now at this time, we start to hear that they're getting closer, these screeches, and we can hear the brush, sticks, just leaves, debris on the ground, like something big, and a couple of them are out there walking towards where we are. We're across the street, and we start to see these yellowish, kind of like a marigold. Yeah, marigold is the color, I believe. I want to say marigold, like a dark yellow, but they were glowing. We didn't have the lights on, and the only other light was the street light. There was like two of them in the cul-de-sac, and they were like a dull orange color. They were not bright at all. And they were at different heights, like 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet. And multiple of them, 5 to maybe 6. I'm not really sure. I'll say 5. I know there was more than 4 because we could see their eyes in pairs. So at this point, the girls are freaked out. They jump in the car, and they're in the back, and myself and Martin are standing there, and we're not in any way being brave, but curiosity had gotten the better of us, and we're staring at the woods, and for some reason I took like 2 steps past from where I was, closer to like the edge of the road, because we're across the street, but we're on like the dirt. So I wasn't even on the road at that point, and then I stepped onto the road to try to get a better look, a better like angle. What is that? Definitely no bravery, just pure curiosity and stupidity. So I don't know, and Martin doesn't like to talk about this. I mean, we've talked many times about some weird stuff. He's been to some like haunted castles in Czech Republic. He is very into the occult, so he's seen some pretty weird shit. And mind you, we were both kind of at that point. Just reading books about Crowley and just stuff that normal kids our age weren't reading, and so I don't know if he saw something at this point, because he has not ever told me, but all I hear him say to my right, behind, he's behind me and to the right. I am now in between the hood ornament and the passenger side headlight, and I hear Martin say, "Jiff, get in the fucking car, man." And that's how he spoke. And he was honestly like he worked out a lot, and he was a big kid. He wasn't small, but he wasn't big. He was just built. So at that point, I hear fear in his voice, and he grabs my arm and starts pulling me. "We gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here." And he jumps in the car, in the front seat. Now, a Caprice Classic was probably like an 88, 86. I don't even know. It was just big. It was like a friggin' land yacht. But it had bench seats. And so he slides over and I jump in and he reaches across from me. I remember this, and locks the door with the door lock, because at this point Gabe is he is clueless of what to do. He can hear everything going on outside and see everything from the car as well. But he's just, you're scared at that point. So we end up pulling out. And now, mind you, if you're coming from where we were coming from, South Glens Falls, you're going south. And this is on your right hand side. So we ended up turning north out onto this cul-de-sac. Now, as we are pulling out, I look over Martin's shoulder and out the driver's side back seat window, and what I saw was not your atypical Dogman. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've talked to Kundo about it, and it was very tall, 8 feet at least, not any smaller, and wide, but not huge. Probably weighed, if I was gonna make a educated guess, I'd say 275, maybe 300. And it was standing upright, and it was not walking fluidly like everyone says. It walked very awkward like. But I got the sense that if this thing wanted to catch us through the woods or on a road race or a track race, that it could very easily catch us and rip us apart. It had a very long, narrow face and snout. And the best way I can explain it, and it had very high pointed ears, but the face, if you remember in Beetlejuice, when they go to scare the girl and they kind of pop their eyes in and pull their face and elongate their face, kind of looked something like that, but with pointed ears and dark fur. I could not get a clear visual on the fur color because of the nighttime and the halogen street lights, I guess they're called, that just put out this soft orange color. And at that point, when Gabe sees this as he's driving, he punches it. And Caprice Classic's not a fast car. They're a big boat, but they've got some get up and go to them as well. And I remember him just matting it to the floor, and you heard the motors boom, boom, and we were gone. And after that, we ended up dropping the girls off, and me, Martin, and Gabe hung out for a while. We went back to Martin's house. Martin lived right next to a Lutheran church, like right next to his mom and dad. When they moved from the Czech Republic, rented a house from the Lutheran church. And go figure, the kid is like into death metal and neocult, and he plays drums, and he lives right next. He's like living in the rectory of this church that nobody lives in. They rented it to help money for the Lutheran church, whatever. And his house was like 6 houses down from my parents. And so we had Gabe drop me and him off. Gabe went home, and we talked about it. And we were just like, what the hell was that? We had no idea. Rougarou, werewolf. We never said Sasquatch because that's not what came to our mind when we saw this. To be honest, werewolf is, what came to my mind, not Dogman or anything, because I don't think anyone was saying it at the time. So then Martin and I started going to bookstores because there was no internet, and I found my first. It was called the Cryptid Handbook, and I don't have it anymore. I thought I did, but I don't. I wish I did. But it was very small and old, but it had the Rougarou in it, and we definitely had the same exact idea when we saw the picture and read the 4 pages of the Rougarou, and yeah. So that is my encounter, and it's not. Thing didn't chase us down; it just popped out. The most interesting thing is that there was many of them, and I believe what they were trying to do was keep us distracted, so maybe 1 or 2 could flank us where we could not see them and take us out. That's my only idea that I have. So that's my encounter, guys. Thanks. There you have it, folks. Today's bonus. I do hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and honestly what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share that information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.